So I'm going to show a little of this, and I'm not going to show the whole clip because it's several minutes long, but I'm going to tell you something about the rest of the clip and what they never mention. Maybe some of you can guess what it is they never mention through the whole segment on how tragic and horrible the flooding and everything is in California right now. Maybe you can guess.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a rare storm that hasn't been seen in California in decades. As we come on the air, millions are under life-threatening flash flood alerts after an historic system pummeled the state. Just listen to this. A blizzard warning was issued for the first time ever in San Bernardino County, where they saw more than 5 feet of snow. Other parts of the state saw hurricane-force winds and torrential rains. Rescue workers raced against the clock to save stranded drivers. And now that storm system is pushing east. Our Dana Griffin is in Los Angeles with the very latest.
Life-threatening flooding in the Golden State. In Southern California's Ventura County, multiple RVs swept into the river. Watch this dramatic rescue, one of several in the region. A driver stuck in raging floodwater clings to a rescuer. They're both hoisted, swinging in the wind before safely landing on solid ground.
Okay, you get the idea. Throughout this entire segment, they never say anything about climate crisis. They never say anything about the fact that the climate systems are spiraling, and your right-wing media, Fox News, etc., will act like mainstream media is just all about climate crisis and climate change, and they're so silly and all that bullshit or whatever. No, the liberal media, the NBC News, the MSNBC, CNN, all of them, yes, they will have segments on climate change, but they will also do way more coverage, A, on a fucking balloon in the sky, but B, on something like this, powerful storms, one for the ages, all that shit. And they will never say climate crisis. They will never mention it. And that's how you make sure there is not strong activism surrounding these issues. That's how you make sure that people are not really standing up. The government's not doing shit. We subsidize big oil to the tune of like $1 million a minute. Oh no, it's 11 million a minute. We subsidize big oil. That's around the world, by the way. Subsidize big oil $11 million a minute, trillions a year. Big oil would not be nearly as profitable if we weren't heavily subsidizing them. And if we subsidized clean energy anywhere near at that amount, we would have switched completely off of fossil fuels by now. But none of that can be talked about because it's all these companies, despite the fact they will occasionally say climate change, they are still funded heavily by big oil. Millions and millions of dollars coming in to CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and all of them to make sure they keep, soft hands on the fossil fuel stuff. I mean, New York Times will occasionally have an article on climate crisis or climate change. I don't deny that they do, but they don't do it a lot, and they don't make it front page news a lot because guess what? New York Times gets a lot of funding from Chevron. Chevron is on their board. They use the same lawyer as Chevron. Chevron is a major shareholder in New York Times. And they do ad campaigns. The New York Times help. So when a company comes to New York Times and says, we want to pay you, $10 million to do ads for us, some of the time New York Times will create the ad with them. We'll say, we'll create an ad for you. And so they work with whatever PR company and they help create the creative side. So New York Times has helped create and come up with ads for Chevron to promote Chevron. And that's how you end up with reports like this, where it's like weather madness, and they never say climate crisis. They never say the shit's hitting the fan because we have fucked this planet. Can't say it. Won't do it. And of course, if you want to get to another level, a layer of reality, because these are the types of layer of reality you won't get from mainstream media, but you also won't get from a lot of independent media. Not only is it the fact that mainstream media is still not really talking about the climate crisis. I mean, 2 years ago, Fairness Accuracy Reporting did a study on, and they found that MSNBC News had 5 reports or something on climate change, and NBC Meet the Press had 2 mentions of climate change. One of them because Bernie Sanders brought it up. That was 2-3 years ago. This is still going on, where they completely ignore that this is a thing. They also look actually where I paused it. It says historic winter storm, or one for the ages. Yeah, these stop becoming one for the ages when it's every fucking year. They were talking about forest fires in California, and they were like, every year I would see reports on nightly news going, forest fires of historic. This is one for the history books, these forest fires. And then the next year they'd go, this is one for the history books, historic fires. You can't say it every year. It's not a fucking historic fire if it's happening every year. Instead, it's the new norm, you goddamn assholes. It's the norm. And you won't even talk about why it's the norm. It's just so fucking infuriating. The idiocy from these people. What was I about to say before that? The historic climate change. They fund mainstream media. Oh, layers of reality. That's right. So one of them that you don't often get is simply the fact that they won't say climate crisis, even when they're doing a report like this. But to go to a deeper layer is even independent media often, almost all the time, won't say the word capitalism. Now, I know if you're out there and you're right wing or something, you go, oh, he brings capitalism into the climate, as if capitalism has anything to do with the climate. Yeah, did capitalism make the clouds go dark? Actually, if you stop and think and stop making that ridiculous voice, why are you talking like that? Fucking stop making that voice. That's stupid. It's just a stupid voice. Why would you do that stupid voice? If you stop and think about it for a second, capitalism is the idea that we have infinite growth on a planet with finite, limited resources, right? And that's impossible, but we keep going down that path. And within that system is the endless burning of fossil fuels, the endless cutting down of trees, the endless driving and selling of more cars every day. And so not only is that all attached with capitalism, the idea that everything has a dollar sign on it except for our future. So they'll put dollar signs on the number of trees, dollar signs on the water, dollar signs on the air, dollar signs on the land, but future, not important. Not important whether we have a future. Dollar signs, I'll give one example, and I don't remember the type of fish. I think it was orange something. There was a type of fish that they were fishing for, and they found out that these fish would come together at a certain time of year, all in this certain shoal, and they'd all group together, millions maybe, and so the trawlers and the fishers, they all go out there and they'd get this type of fish that was prevalent. They were so easy to catch; they could just scoop their net in and get thousands. So they were selling them cheap all over the world, selling them cheap. What they didn't realize is that this was the entirety of the population of that fish, and they live for 40 years. Those fish can live for. So when they cleared them all out in 10 years, maybe 20, now you have a tiny percentage of those fish remaining. And for those 10, 20 years, it was fucking boom times. For those 10, 20 years, they were like, we got more fish than we can handle. We're gonna just sell them for pennies. Anybody want a nice fillet? I'll sell it to you for a dime, a fucking dime. Because I can just go out there, I can scoop my hand in and catch them. It's amazing. So that's how capitalism works. There's no thought for the future. There's no thought for the time it will take for the planet to rehabilitate and to resurrect the resources that we are destroying. And this is a perfect example. So we are, creating climate crisis. And by the way, we're killing the environment in a myriad ways. So if you want to be a moron who thinks climate crisis is not happening, then okay, fine. But how about you become an activist in all the other ways that we are destroying the planet, cutting down the rainforest, which won't regenerate for fucking generations.